In the hills of southeastern Nigeria, hidden where the road becomes red dust and the wind carries whispers, there was a village called Umuachuku. Isolated, old, afraid of change. There lived a woman named Zitri. She was not born into joy. Her parents died in a fire no one could explain, only that strange marks were found on the ground outside their hut. Since childhood, she was avoided. The villagers said her name brought bad luck. She was mocked for her size, her ashy skin, her silence. Children mimicked her limp, women whispered when she walked past. Zitri swallowed her anger and walked. She swept compounds, scrubbed pots, weeded farms, carried firewood until her shoulders ached. Her payment: leftover food, rusted coins, slaps when she asked for more. But something inside her never died. Not her dignity. One early Harmattan morning, she went to the bush before sunrise. The trees breathed mist. The world was quiet. Then she heard chanting, low, musical, strange. From between two iroko trees stepped a man. Tall, bare-chested, beads glowing faintly like coals. His eyes were not human, they flickered like oil lamps. "I am Kuja," he said, his voice like silk wrapped in thunder. "I have watched you suffer. The world is not fair. But I can change your fate." Zitri flinched. "Why me?" "Because the forgotten always make the fiercest servants." He opened a raffia sack. Inside were bundles of clean 1,000 Nigerian Naira's notes. Blood-stained cowries. Dried herbs. Used menstrual pads tied in red thread. Kuja explained, he needed her to collect pads, used ones, from women in the village. He didn't say why. Only that the blood was sacred. The exchange was simple, obedience, in return for wealth, comfort, and fearlessness. Zitri agreed. But she didn't realize this was not a deal. It was a binding. Zitri began collecting waste. She offered to clean dustbins, to burn trash. No one questioned her sudden helpfulness. She started receiving gifts, money, trinkets, wrappers. Her skin glowed. Her heart transformed, painted and tired. She wore gold-rimmed glasses, bought a second-hand smartphone, even attended village meetings she once wasn't allowed near. But she kept her distance. Every pad she found went into a black nylon bag. At night, she slipped into the bush. Kuja would be there, waiting near a red candle circle. 8 hooded men always stood behind him, silent, motionless. They burned the pads in a smokeless flame. The smell was of burning blood, of secrets unraveling. Zitri's eyes would roll back. She often woke with new money in her hands, sometimes with blood on her feet. Soon, strange things began to happen in Umuachuku. A pregnant woman miscarried 3 times. A girl bled non-stop during her period and went mute. Boys who mocked Zitri woke up with scratch marks on their chest. The village stream dried for 3 days, but only when Zitri came near. Yet no one accused her. Until Kayomi. Kayomi was not just Zitri's neighbor, she was also the only person who had ever offered her water on a hot day. Suspicious of Zitri's sudden wealth, she followed her into the bush one night, barefoot and cloaked in a wrapper. She saw it all. The chanting. The hooded figures. The burning pads. The way Zitri floated midair, eyes white, as Kujo painted symbols on her skin with ash and menstrual blood. Kayomi screamed. But her voice wouldn't come out. She ran, but her eyes bled as she reached home. Her vision began to fail. That night, shadows whispered at her windows. In the morning, she went blind. Kayomi was carried to the king's palace. Her tongue loosened when the chief priestess arrived, a terrifying woman in white, whose eyes could split lies from truth. She burned incense, chanted over a tortoise shell, and declared, "There is a blood ritual happening under this land. The fire is not yet full, but soon it will ask for more. The king, frightened, summoned Zitri. She came slowly, her feet dragging, her face covered. When she entered the palace, the dogs outside began howling. The chief priestess did not beat her, did not curse her. She simply said, "If you lie, your heart will explode before the next breath." Zitri sobbed. "I was tired of being poor. Tired of being mocked. I wanted to feel like I mattered." She confessed to the deal with Kuja, to the rituals, to the secrets. The king ordered a search of the bush. Zitri led them to a termite mound. The chief priestess touched it, and it crumbled, revealing stairs descending underground. They went down. What they saw chilled them. Altars made of bones. Bowls filled with clotted blood. A tree root that pulsed like a beating heart. Kuja, kneeling in meditation. Behind him, women's hair braided into charms. Kuja rose slowly. "You have touched what should not be touched," he hissed. "This village broke her, and I made her whole. You punish her, but never the ones who mocked her." The chief priestess did not argue. She began chanting in a language older than Igbo. Wind screamed through the tunnel. The symbols on the walls caught fire. Kuja tried to vanish, but the spell held him. His true form emerged, a creature with no eyes, skin like peppered bark, and teeth stretching ear to ear. The villagers stoned him as he screamed, and the tunnel caved in. Kayomi's sight returned. She never spoke of that night again. Zitri's wealth vanished. Her heart crumbled. Her body bent, her knees twisted unnaturally from the curse left behind. She stayed in the village one more week. No one harmed her. No one helped. On the seventh day, she walked away, barefoot, a torn nylon bag over her shout. Months after the tunnel collapsed, Umwachuku village tried to forget. But strange things continued to happen. Chickens crowed at midnight. Newborns refused breast milk until their mothers bathed in charcoal and bitter leaf. The village stream turned black for a day, then cleared, leaving dead fish that glowed faintly in the dark. And behind it all, one name whispered by old women stirring their herbal pots. Zitri. Mama Ijeoma, a once barren widow, suddenly gave birth to twins, one smiling, one never blinking. She claimed it was a miracle, but people whispered her husband's spirit had returned in the child that never blinked. At night, she heard it humming old war songs. One evening, the chief priestess visited unannounced and left a white chalk mark on the baby's forehead. "This child is not yours," she said, "and it's waiting for something that should not come." What no one knew was that Zitri, while still in the village, had touched Mama Ijeoma's doorstep with her blood-drenched fingers during a trance. A gift, or a curse. A young boy, Obil, began drumming alone in the forest. No one taught him. No one gave him a drum. He carved it from a fallen Iroko tree after dreaming of a woman with one foot turned backward, who walked with wind. When he played, birds froze mid-flight. Goats gave birth to stillborn kids. Villagers said he was being used. But Obi never stopped. His drumming grew louder as the village's secrets deepened. Zitri wandered for days before arriving at the Ekeagu forest, believed to be the land where lost spirits whisper their names to stay remembered. She didn't remember who told her about it, only that she was drawn. The trees were thick and knotted like clenched fists. The wind carried names, some hers, some forgotten. There, she met an old woman with hollow eyes who cooked yam with no fire. "Are you fleeing punishment, or seeking more power?" she asked. "I'm tired," Zitri said. "Then why do your feet still bleed with ambition?" In the forest, Zitri reached a river where the water ran upward. On its surface, faces floated, faces of people she once envied, hated, feared. Kuja's face surfaced too. He spoke, "You broke the pact. But the blood you collected still owes." Zitri screamed, but the river swallowed her voice. The village begins to rot. Back in Umuachuku, women began losing their periods for months. When they returned, the blood smelled like burnt rubber. Men became sterile. The herbalist's roots turned to ash. The chief priestess collapsed mid-ritual, declaring, "The debt is not settled." The altar cracked, but the god did not leave. They realized something chilling: Zitri was not the final vessel. She had passed something on. But to whom? In the deepest part of the forest, Zitri encountered a being far older than Kuja, a child-shaped creature with a mouth stitched shut and wings made of dried leaves. It communicated by bleeding words onto the ground. "I can make them feel what you felt. No more pity. Only fear." This time, Zitri didn't hesitate. She allowed herself to be marked again. But not as a servant. As a mother of something new. Parting seeds of terror. As she emerged from the forest years later, her skin was pale like old paper. She wore a mask made of dried menstrual pads stitched into a crown. Her feet no longer touched the ground. Wherever she walked, people forgot their names. Zitri returns not to Umuachuku, but to neighboring villages, spreading quiet plagues that are disguised as misfortunes. Obil's drumming becomes prophecy, each beat predicting who will fall next. Mama Idioma's blinking child begins drawing symbols that match the ones in Zitri's tunnel. A new girl, born with a veiled face, begins asking the question, who bled first? She was born during an eclipse, when the sun turned red and the birds stopped chirping. The midwife, seasoned and unafraid, dropped her tools and ran. The child's face was covered with a translucent veil of skin, like a core, but thicker, like the web of a spider soaked in smoke. Her mother, Nkiru, wept with joy, thinking it a sign of greatness. But the village called her Nonyegboro, the girl from outside. She didn't cry at birth. She only blinked once, and the lantern in the hut exploded. By the time she turned 5, she spoke rarely. But when she did, her voice was too clear, too heavy. She spoke in full proverbs, in forgotten tongues. She never played with other children, never laughed. Instead, she walked barefoot through the market, touching wares, then asking shopkeepers in her cold, dry tone, who bled first? At first, it was taken as nonsense. But then, things began to happen. One woman who laughed at her miscarried twins 3 days later. A man who shouted "Spirit child" at her was found floating in his well, his body folded like cloth. Still, she kept asking, who bled first? One night, the chief priestess returned from seclusion in the mountains. She went straight to the girl's compound, barefoot, head bowed. Without asking, she poured libations and knelt before the girl, who was now 6 but carried herself like an old woman hiding in a child's skin. One day, she stood before the old termite mound, the collapsed entrance to Kujo's lair. Placing her hand upon it, she whispered, and the earth trembled. Visions flooded her mind, Zitri's pact, the burning paths, the blood rituals. She saw Zitri's face, not as a monster, but as a woman broken by the world. Nena began to change. Her voice carried the weight of forgotten songs, and her footsteps left traces of ash. She painted symbols on walls, matching those from the old rituals. The villagers grew fearful, recalling the horrors of the past. The chief priestess, now frail and blind, sensed the resurgence. She summoned Nena, who approached with calm determination. "Child," the priestess rasped, "what do you seek?" Nena replied, "Justice. For Zitri. For all who suffered." That night, Nena stood at the village square, surrounded by those who once shunned her. She spoke of pain, of betrayal, of the cycle that bound them. Then, she offered a choice: confront the past and seek redemption, or continue in silence and fear. Moved by her words, the villagers chose to remember. They held ceremonies to honor the forgotten, to cleanse the land, and to break the chains of old curses. Nene's question, who bled first, became a mantra, a reminder of the cost of ignorance and the power of acknowledgement. She became a bridge between the past and the future, ensuring that the mistakes of Umwachukwu would not be repeated. And in the whispers of the wind, one could hear a new name, hope. Long before Nena's birth, when the termite mound still bled salt and night birds dared not perch near it, Zitri's spirit had lingered, not in the way of restless ghost, but as a whisper folded into the soil, the blood, the wind. Zitri had not truly died that day in the flames. Her body burned, yes, but her essence, the grief, the rage, the betrayal, it refused to fade. Her final scream, muffled by fire, tore a hole between the living and the unseen. It was into this tear that her spirit fell, waiting not for revenge, but for reckoning. Years later, on a night when the moon did not rise, and the sky held its breath, Nena was born, wrapped in the birth veil. The midwife screamed not because of the veil, but because she saw something move within it. A shadow behind Nena's eyes. A gleam that wasn't hers. Zitri had chosen her. Zitri's spirit, heavy with pain and unfinished ritual, did not possess Nena. No. She nested within her, gently, like a mother tucking in a child. It was not vengeance she saw through the girl, it was truth. She did not want her pain repeated. She wanted someone pure enough to carry the full weight of her story, and tell it without fear. Nena's questions, who bled first, were not hers alone. They were echoes of Zitri's final thoughts. They were the questions Zitri screamed in her head as she was dragged by the villagers, betrayed, offered up like a scapegoat for sins everyone shared. When Nene touched the termite mound and felt the vision flood her, she did not merely see Zitri, she became her. For a heartbeat, two souls coexisted, the child born of the future, and the woman forsaken by the past. Zitri showed her everything. The night of the pact in the bush. The burning of her parts. The betrayal by her own blood. The stifling silence of women too afraid to speak. But she also showed her a path forward, one that Zitri herself never had. A path that required courage, not curses. In guiding the village through remembrance, Nena became Zitri's justice. And when the final ritual was complete, when the names of the forgotten were spoken aloud, and the silence shattered, Zitri's spirit finally exhaled. She left Nena's body like a warm breath on a cold mirror. But the bond remained. From that day forward, when the wind rustled banana leaves at midnight or the firewood cracked in the hearth, some swore they saw Zitri's shadow watching, not with anger, but with pride. And so, in the village of Umwachukwu, they no longer feared veiled girls. They honored them. Because one veiled girl had carried the pain of another, and in doing so, ended the curse. Yet sometimes, when a child is born silent, or when a woman cries by the river with no one listening, the wind will whisper again. Who bled first? This is the end of this story. Please help me subscribe to our channel, like